welcome. And what is that predicated on in terms of stimulus from Washington and the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, so I think that we take a look at these eye-popping numbers that we put out in our new U.S. forecast, with second quarter as the largest single quarter contraction on record. You can start to understand why there's such a fire in the belly of policymakers to try to get stimulus passed as quickly as possible. Of course, the Fed with a slew of alphabet soup programs that have gone even further than we went in the financial crisis. And then Congress, while it feels like they act slowly, they've actually been acting much more quickly than Congress typically acts, and especially when you're putting together such a huge stimulus package. You know, we don't know if what the final number is going to be. Is it $2 trillion? Is it $2.5 trillion? But we estimate nearly $1 trillion hole in the economy from the lost output that we'll get this year. And so that goes far in addressing that.
So we are going to talk later in the show about some of the businesses and parts of the economy that are still expanding, including food delivery, things like Instacart, cloud computing. We heard from Microsoft's CEO this morning. They're seeing huge demand for that. You know, why isn't that doing more to offset the hit from the discretionary parts of the economy? In other words, how do you get to a minus 30%? Because that's such an enormous number.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what we do. We have department huddles with our equity analysts in the firm to really understand deeply what's going on with their companies. And when I hear from our analysts that cover those discretionary parts, that, for instance, Kimberly Greenberger that covers retail for us, she has a weekly store traffic tracker that says traffic is down 80% in the country. So it's not down 100%. As you say, there are some things going on. Dealerships are telling us that in some cases here in the Northeast, where they normally move 45 cars a day, they're moving one. And so that is a huge drop-off in activity. Again, there is some activity going on. You've got some states that are not as restricted with the social distancing as, say, parts of the Northeast and the West Coast. But it is even in the financial crisis, even in recessions, no one was told you can't go out and conduct business. Doors weren't shut in the way that they are now. We estimate that jobless claims, when they come in on Thursday, are going to be 3.4 million. That's a 1 week number.
That's unbelievable.
That's how many were laid off last week. That's incredible. And so it's a stop in economic activity. And what we're now focused on is what the shape of growth will look like on the other side of that as the social distancing measures start to recede and we're told to go back in the water. How quickly do we really want to jump in?
Sure, because, no matter what the message is from up top, there's going to be plenty of people wary of going back to the restaurants and so forth, and maybe rightly so if it helps keep the more vulnerable population out of the hospitals. So what does that bounce back, let's call it, look like? And are you watching these events in Washington or waiting to hear from the president, what he ultimately says about, quote unquote, going back to normal? I mean, is there a way that we can at this point prevent a 30% drop and get something much flatter, much more manageable, or no?
So I think it's going to be very difficult to see that happening because, of course, it's going to be up to the individual states and locales of what they want to do with the social distancing measures. As you all talked about right before I was on, Cuomo's idea of, okay, when it is time to lessen the social distancing measures, maybe we let young, healthier workers that test with antibodies to go back to work first. That's going to be a slow opening of doors. And of course, with all of us working from home, I can tell you that I spend a fraction of what I spend when I'm in the office, right, when I'm just at home. And so,
are you talking about spending, the money you're spending or the productivity?
Oh, the money that I'm spending. My productivity, let me tell you, 21-hour days when you're working from home in this environment because you can get on the phone at all times. So I tell you, my productivity, I think, has gone through the roof. But anyhow, and hey, we're the lucky ones that are still working right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, because we have the ability to work from home. We're not paid hourly. Our companies did not shut their doors. And so that's really, as an economist, what I'm really focused on is what is in this fiscal package that will really help small businesses get the money they need as quickly as possible, not waiting 5 to 6 months to get a loan. That's too late. It's already too late for those that shut their doors last week. We want to mitigate hold to a minimum the number that will close their doors going forward. We want to be sure that households get the backstop that they need to not just put food on their table, but to be able to make those important loan payments. And so I would expect some loan holiday programs here. We're seeing in one of the versions of the bill, the Senate Democrat version, that you've got a proposed $600 a week payment to those that are drawing unemployment benefits. That really helps kind of make up that gap, because unemployment benefits do not go nearly as far as making up for the lost income from the job that they had.
Right. So let me ask you on
there
that.
are a lot of assistance there. That's important for me because I want to keep this a very sharp and short downturn,
right,
as opposed to a longer downturn with a wider bottom, which would be a normal recession.
Right. And as we've talked a lot about that 30% plunge in the second quarter, you have maybe a third quarter 29% annualized rebound. So again, trying to make that more of a V shape. One thing I'm just curious from a policy point of view, as these bills work through, there's some concern about the strings attached. So one proposal, I've heard out there, I'm not sure which legislation it's in, would potentially require people to pay back some of the loans that they're given. Or if you're a business and there are conditions attached associated with wages or other things like that, would that be better or worse, in your opinion, in terms of maybe discouraging people from accepting the money versus encouraging everybody to take it, even those who may not need it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think, I'm always of the mindset that the more strings attached there are, the less businesses will take advantage of the programs. And of course, if you tell a business that here's this critical lifeline to keep you in business, but you can't lay off employees, that's not going to work if you need to lay off the employees immediately because you just don't have the revenues on hand to pay them, but you've got to wait for those tax breaks or wait for the loan to come through, right? Those temporal differences can be life or death to a business. And so I would want to see the details of that. But I'm just, for a theoretical purposes, I'm not a fan personally of giving out those loans in times of emergencies with a lot of strings attached. And so I think that they can be crafted in a way where you can get the money to businesses where you have delayed payments for quite some time, so that hopefully when those loans are being paid back, we're in an upswing in the economy where revenues are growing and they're able to better afford the payment on those loans. And similarly for households, if we're talking about loan payment holidays, we've got to have large buy-in from households. Maybe that's a universal program that allows them to go into those payment holiday type program but we also have to be sure that we're protecting the lenders as well. I mean, this is a no-fault situation for everyone. We want to try to create as few losers in this as possible.
All right.